Guys, this is something that you're going to learn today, that you're going to say thank you to yourself, and you're going to give yourself a big pat on your back that you showed up today. Because you're going to be so excited about what we're going to learn today. Because I am excited about it. I am super excited about what we're going to learn today. Okay. So I want you to open up your Chumash, Parsha Teruma, page 519. And today's class, we're going to talk about the menorah, the oldest and the most famous Jewish symbol, even more than the Star of David, by the way. Star of David is a much newer Jewish symbol. The menorah is being for way, way longer than the Star of David. Way longer than the Star of David. Coins from ancient times, synagogues. You go look, every time they dig up synagogues in Israel from different times, different generations, they always find the menorah. There was something about the menorah that is being mesmerized by the Jewish people in history. And the beauty of the menorah and the way the menorah was shaped and what it carried in it. There's something about the menorah that is extremely unique and extremely special. And it's interesting, this is the only artifact in the entire tabernacle that Moshe did not really build or construct. It just came to be. Basically, what happens is Moshe gets instructions from God how to make the menorah, as we're going to see soon. And Moshe has a very, very difficult time understanding how to make the menorah. He doesn't really understand that. It's too complicated. It's too difficult. And we're going to see soon why it was so complicated, so difficult. And God is showing him a PowerPoint in sky, in the heavens. It says God showed him in fire how the menorah looks. So you could look at it and basically structure it based on what he sees in the sky, in heaven. And Moshe still is having a hard time with that. So God says, you know what? Forget about it. Take a kikar of gold. That was the amount, how much gold you needed to have for the menorah. Throw it into a furnace of fire. And out of the fire came out the menorah. So the menorah that we had in the first temple, and some say it was there also during the second temple, all the way till the story with the Greeks of Hanukkah, where the menorah was confiscated. That menorah was made by the hand of God. And we're going to see in the verse inside, you're going to see that it's actually written inside. So I want you to, you will see in a second. Okay, so let's first of all turn to page 516, actually, on the bottom. And I want you to really pay close attention. 516 on the bottom, 517 on the bottom. I want to read it in Hebrew and I'm going to translate it. Ve'osiso menoiras zohov to'er. You should make a menorah out of pure gold. Miksha, the menorah should be made. Miksha, what is miksha? One piece. Te'ase amenor should be made, hammered from one single piece of metal. So in other words, the menorah was not just a bunch of pieces welded together. The menorah was one piece of gold. You had to take a chisel or something very refined that's being used by welders or by people who work with gold. And slowly, from that piece, one chunk of gold, you carve out the shape of the menorah. But I want you to pay attention to a word in Hebrew that, right away, catches everyone's eye. It says, Miksho te'ase hamenorah. Te'ase doesn't mean you should do. Te'ase means should get done. And on this, the Talmud tells us that Moshe had a very difficult time how to make it. God Almighty said to him, just throw that gold into the fire and it will be made by itself. So every other piece of furniture in the tabernacle, every tapestry, every part of the walls, whatever we're going to read on Shabbat, the whole structure of the tabernacle, every part of that was done through Moshe, Betzalel. He had craftspeople, he had ladies who were working, They were weaving, they were cutting, they were doing all of that. Came to the menorah, as the Torah tells us, Te'ase a menorah, will be done, it will get done. Okay? And then the verses, as they continue, describe exactly the menorah, how it was done. And in order to just not go through all of that, you could just turn the page and you have a picture on the left side of the menorah according to the Rambam. And I want you to pay really close attention. On the right side of the page, you have the actual menorah as the Rambam himself. The Rambam himself drew a diagram of the menorah. If you're participating online, you can see over here. This is Rambam on the Pirush of Mishnah on Menachos. The Rambam took a pencil or a pen, whatever he was using, and he made a beautiful image of the menorah. Now, until the Rambam, the only menorah that we have that everybody knows is, what type of a menorah do you know about? The round menorah.
Oh, I was thinking the one that's right by the stairs when we go down to
on the Arch of Titus, yeah, on the Arch of Titus in Rome, there is a menorah. That menorah is being the one that's being used by the state of Israel as their symbol. It's a menorah with round branches, and it has one sit. And the menorah sits on this rectangular or octagon, or I don't know, looks like it's sitting like on a sitting. And this is the menorah that they engraved in the Arch of Titus, where it says engraved Judah Kapta, the Judaism is captivated, where they used, Titus was the one who destroyed the temple. When he came to Rome, they created the arch for his victory. In the arch, there is the engraving of the enslaved slaves carrying different things. And in the front, you see the carrying of the menorah. That is the menorah that the Jewish people, unfortunately, believed for many, many generations. That is how the menorah looked. And the tragedy is that this has became the known menorah. When someone wants to describe a menorah from the temple, they take that picture from that arch, and this is what they believe the menorah is. Now, this was actually something that many, many generations Jews were arguing about what is the shape of the menorah. Until we found a manuscript in Arabic. Maimonides wrote in Arabic a interpretation on the Mishnah. It was sitting in Oxford for many, many years. And finally, it was released to publish. It was a Jew in Israel. His name was Rabbi Yosef Kapach. He was a Yemenite Jew who spoke Arabic, and he spoke the dialect that was spoken in the times of Maimonides. And he got a hold of that manuscript, and he rewrote Maimonides' teachings from the original Arabic. And when he reprinted it, they found that the Maimonides is actually made a painting. Maimonides himself, not someone else. He himself, with his own pen and his own writing, he made a painting of the menorah. Ever since that was revealed, all doubts and all questions were set aside. No one ever again argued on this. Now, and we have to remember that this is the menorah. This is the menorah. Now, the problem is that if we use a menorah from the Arch of Titus, it's kind of like caving in. It's kind of like, they used to make Jews stand by that arch. They used to take the Jews in Rome and humiliate them by taking them to that arch and have them look at that arch. Aita. So that arch of Titus is a symbol of humiliation. It's a symbol of destruction. And somehow, mistakenly, now, what is the menorah that's in the Arch of Titus? What is that menorah? So, obviously, it's a menorah. There was many,
Made out of gold, too.
probably made out of gold too, because there was many, many lamps and candelabras. The temple at the menorah, and then there was many menorahs. So the menorah, we don't know where it is. That's the menorah. The Maimonides is describing. What you see in the Arch of Titus is a menorah. They were carrying all sorts of stuff that they took from the Jewish temple. But this painting from Maimonides put to rest a very, very long debate and argument. And the Rebbe talked about this in 1982. The Rebbe gave a talk. It was Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. And this is the time when we study about the temple. And the Rebbe talked very seriously about the importance to teach our children how the temple was looking, because this is the time when we learn about the destruction of the temple. We need to teach our children how the temple really looked, how the utensils in the temple really looked. And the Rebbe inspired and encouraged everyone to advertise Maimonides' menorah. This is why you could see the menorahs that we put in the streets and the Republic menorahs is always that menorah, because we feel it's important. People should get out of the misconception that the menorah was round. Now, the Rebbe gave another example of something that people have a mistake in, and that is the shape of the tablets. The shape of the tablets, the way a lot of people misinterpret. Michael has noticed the tablets before I even said that. Yeah, so the shape of the tablets is that they are round on top. In synagogues, temples, places you go, people use the tablets with the shape, the rounded thing on top. Now, that is clearly in the Talmud, it clearly says the measurement of the tablets. Talks about how square it was. It was exactly a square because it had to fit in to the Ark of Covenant. Because the Ark of Covenant that we study today's Parsha, in the Ark of Covenant, there was the broken tablets, there were the second set of tablets, and they had to fit in exactly. There shouldn't be any empty space. So the Talmud discusses in the Tractate of the Basra, the Gemara says exactly how it was cut out to fit into the shape of the Ark of Covenant. There was never an opinion that the tablets looked like this, look grounded. Now, you know where it comes from? A painting that a Christian made in one of the cathedrals. Michelangelo made a painting of Moses, and he's holding tablets. And in those tablets, he made the tablets looking like a tuchus. And that became the tablets that you go to synagogues. Not talking about modern synagogues that people don't know. I'm talking about synagogues where people who learned. They learn Torah, they learn the Talmud, they know what it says in the Talmud. And they have those type of tablets on top of their ark, coming from a completely unkosher source, completely used, abused by foreign sources. I mean, obviously, if you watch the movie, he also carries tuchas tablets, but that's not the tablets. Now, those two things, the tablets and the menorah, we have to remember, this is a wrong way. We have to sometimes teach our children things that they should know, because it's a mistake. It's a mistake, and some of us grew up with that mistake. So this was just one point that I want to bring out about this painting of this menorah. So the 8 candles is called a Hanukkah. This is for the 8 days of Hanukkah. We light 8 candles. It's not the menorah of the temple at 7 candles. At 7 candles, at 3 on each side, with 1 branch in the middle. But I want you to pay close attention if you look at the painting for a second. Besides having 3 branches on each side and a middle branch in the middle, there was flowers, and there was cups, and there was something that the Torah calls buttons. Kaftereo. The word kaftereo, interesting to see how they translated here. Let's see in verse 31. You should make the menorah out of pure gold. The menorah should be made hammered from a single piece of metal. Its base and its stem, it is ornamental cups, spheres. What's this word in English? Spheres and flowers. Yeah. And flowers should all come from the same piece of metal and not be made separately. 6 branches should be coming out of its sides diagonally, 3 menorah branches from one of the sides, and the 3 menorah branches of the second side. So besides having just branches and cups where the oil sits and the flame is burning, there was this little jewelry that was made in the structure of the menorah. There was little flowers. There was those circles that looked like buttons or apples. And then there was these cups. Yeah?
This is something that just came about. The first one was
1 second. David Pekarsky wants the Zoom link. He's probably looking at the wrong Zoom. Give me 1 second. Let me just message him the right Zoom. No, but David Pekarsky is in Arizona, so I don't mind him watching it on Zoom. I mind if people live in town and watch it on Zoom. 1 second. Let me get for him the Zoom link. He's looking around. He's lost in the internet world looking for the Zoom link. Rak Rega. Guys, please have another piece of cake meanwhile. Give me a second. Let me just send him the Zoom link. Copy URL. Here he is. What did I give him? Okay. So you have in the menorah, you have those interesting round, looks like apples, circles. You have flowers, and you have those cups. Now I want you to look closely on the paint on the picture here. You could see that each one of those branches carries a cup. Under the cup, you could see there is a flower. Under the flower, there is a round button. And under the round button, there are 3 goblets, one inside the other. You see that? Yes. In the middle one, the same thing. You see the flower right under the cup from the oil. Then comes the button. Then comes the 3 goblets. And then you have 3 buttons that from each button comes out 2 branches. And then on the bottom, about halfway through before the leg, the bottom of the leg, you have a flower, a button, and you have this ornamental cup. Okay? Now, I want you to pay attention to something interesting, that those cups are not, they're standing like upside down cups instead of standing like a cup. You know, if it's and actually it's called a cup. So it's supposed to look like a cup, yeah, upwards. Maimonides in his painting, and this is what we are following today, is the painting of Maimonides. You could see the Rambam, when he paints those cups, he makes the cups upside down. Really strange. Now, there is actually opinions who are a little later than Maimonides who talk about before that painting was ever discovered, and they're trying to explain that those cups were really standing facing up, and if oil overspilled, it spilled inside those cups, and they all assume. They're only writing assumptions, they don't know. Now, we have a Maimonides painting, and Maimonides painting, he writes himself, his son, by the way, Maimonides had a son, was his successor. His name was Avraham. By the way, you know the Maimon family, there's a lot of Avraham, Al Maimon, all the Maimons. Avraham was the son of the Rambam. The Rambam's name was Moshe. Maimonides had a son who was his successor, and from him came the whole Maimon family till today are the descendants of Avraham ben Arambam. Avraham ben Arambam was the successor of Maimonides in Egypt. He was called Avraham Nagid. Nagid was the name of like a prince, a leader. And Avraham ben Arambam writes regarding this painting, he says, my father has painted it exactly the way he envisioned, and he studied what the menorah is, and it was precisely done It's not that he was just because he had like just a pen and a paper, he was just dribbling and painting. Anything in this painting is a teaching. And the interesting thing is, one of the fascinating things is the branches, going up in a straight line up. That is one thing that was a big chiddush when this was discovered. Another big thing is the way he painted the cups like upside down goblets. Now, the upside down goblets, hello?
Sure, but this is Noah. I'm right outside.
Okay, we're gonna open up the gates for you. Wait a second.
I'm sorry.
Can we trust him?
Now, the interesting thing is that Maimonides, when he makes those goblets upside down, why did he make them upside down? I mean, everything that we have usually is, if you shake a lulav, for example, there is something called kederech gdilasan. You have to hold the lulav the way it grows. If you hold the lulav upside down, it's not a kosher. The same thing also with the etrog. Yeah, the etrog, many people make this confusing thing when they hold the etrog in their hands. So the etrog has one side. Can you have a seat there? The etrog has a pitam, yeah, and the etrog has a ukatz. The ukatz is the part of the etrog that's connected to the tree. Pitam is the part of the etrog that is on the other side. Now, if you hold the etrog, when you shake the lulav and etrog, you hold it with the pitam down, you have to redo the mitzvah. Because you have to hold, everything has to be held kederech kedilatan, the way it's growing. So etrog, the way it grows, it's interesting, even though it's a fruit, and because of its weight, it's hanging down. But really, when you watch etrog, how it develops, it doesn't grow like all fruits hanging down. It starts growing always upwards. So the stem is on the bottom, and the fruit is on top. Now, after a little while, the etrog develops, he starts facing down. But because it grows upwards, you gotta hold it with the pitim, with the stem on the bottom, and the pitim on top. You remember that for Sukkot is coming soon, you shouldn't forget. So there's an idea called kederech gdilasan. Everything that we do in mitzvahs, we have the obligation to do them according to the natural course. It comes to Maimonides. This is, again, we're talking about this incredible painting that Maimonides himself, Rambam himself painted. It comes to paint those gvi'im, those goblets that are on the menorah. He paints them upside down. Different than what anybody ever thought. Always you think, if Hashem said to make gvi'im in the menorah, probably means cups. It should look like cups. The way a gavia, what is a gavia? A gavia is, in Kiddush, we call the Kiddush cup is called in Hebrew Agavia. The name, for the first time, the name is written in the Tanakh. Who remembers where's the first time where the word Gavia is written? Come on, where's the first time Gavia is written in the Tanakh? Sending all back to Hebrew school. By Yosef has the goblet that he hides in Benjamin's bag. With Gavia Kesef. Yeah, this is where the whole name Gavia comes from. You see it the first time when he has the goblet that he is using to pretend that that he knows things through his goblet. Menachesh, Agavia Sheboye Nachesh Adoni. He uses the goblet to kind of like guess things, and they think that he's using some type of sorcery through his goblet, and then he asks his son to hide the goblet in Yosef. So the word Gavia is used usually for a cup. Now, in the menorah structure, the Gavia was used particularly in an upside down way. Why? Why upside down? So I saw a beautiful explanation that what's the whole point of the menorah in the first place? The Talmud asks this question. The Talmud in the Tractate of Menachot. The Gemara asks, what's the point of the menorah? God needs the light of the menorah. God is the one who put a pillar of fire to walk in front of the Jewish people in the desert. He's the source of light. He's the source of illumination. Does God need in his house light? Does he need to look around? What does he need a menorah? Says the Talmud, why is there a menorah? Eidut hi lekol ba'ei ha'olam she'ashchina shvuya b'Yisrael. The menorah was there as a testimony that the Shekhinah is resting upon the Jewish people. How was it a testimony? Because the menorah never burnt out. Even though the 6 candles burnt out, there was a Ner HaMaravi, it was the western candle, the Ner Tamid. Every synagogue has a Ner Tamid. The idea is that it was a candle that never burnt out. Never burnt out. And there was a sign that God is resting upon the Jewish people. So basically, the whole point of the menorah was not to provide some type of a light, because they needed light in the temple, so they needed a menorah to turn on the light. No. It was there as a testimony to the world, not to the Jews, to the world, for the Goyim, for the Umot HaOlam, for the nations of the world, should know that God is resting upon the Jewish people. Interesting fact is, when King Solomon builds the temple, and then later on when they do the second temple, he makes windows on the temple. And the windows is called Chalonot Shkufim Atumim. What is Shkufim Atumim? Shkufim usually means see-through. Atumim in Hebrew means not see-through. So how could you make see-through, not three windows? So the Talmud explains, and this is how it was. The temple stood for altogether of close to almost 900 years. So there was a long time we had a temple. The first one was 410, the second one was 420. But we had a temple for a very long time. So it says regarding those windows, the way the windows were made, usually what do you make windows? Make a window, usually you make narrow on the top and wide on the bottom. So the sun shines in and it could spread itself in the room. The menorah in the temple, the way the windows were shaped was narrow on the inside and wide towards the outside. It looked like the light from the inside was shining, instead of taking in the light from the outside and spreading on the inside. The chalonot shkufim atumim was made in a way like we are not taking in light from the outside. This home is a home that spreads light to the outside. Temple was built in a way that the windows were shkufim. There was windows for light, but atumim, towards the inside, there was no light coming in. Maybe a little sliver of light. But it looked like, when you walked outside, it looked like the temple is radiating light toward the outside. So the point of the temple is not that God created a home for himself to self-serve him. The point of the temple was to create a space where the world benefits from the light of the temple. The world is shining from the temple. Says the Rebbe, look at the menorah. What is the job of the menorah? The job of the menorah is to light to the world that the Shekhinah rests upon the Jewish people. Yeah, Eidutu lekol ba'ei ha'olam she'ashchina shvuya b'Yisrael. Now, what do we do with the goblets? It's not that the goblets are standing like they are containing. The goblets are standing like they are pouring. The light, this is why Maimonides didn't just paint those goblets upside down. It was intentionally done that way, because the point of those goblets was to show that it's not like a barrel that is due to hold and contain. It's not like a bottle that is due to hold and contain. It's a goblet. What is the job of a goblet? Temporarily, it holds the l'chaim inside. But the point of the cup is we should say l'chaim and drink it up. This is what it's serving. The rice called a cup. So those goblets were there upside down to teach us that the idea was that the energy and the light of the menorah was there not to just contain itself in its own space, but rather to spill over and to spill out and to give out the light through those windows, through the menorah, to the rest of the world. Now, obviously, this is a message for each and every one of us. Some of us are so busy with self-improvement and so busy with being good and being religious or being studious or being learned. And we forget that the whole point of learning and the whole point of being was in order to inspire others. Your job is not to just fill yourself up. I mean, there was times in history when that's what the mission was, to fill ourselves up. But to be busy with improving yourself and cultivating yourself, but at the same time, the world doesn't benefit from you, why are you blaming now?
He was talking about this.
So I'm saying is the point of the menorah was to teach us the idea of pouring to others, giving the light to others, becoming what we call an ambassador of light for the world around you and inspiring them with God. But this is just an introduction to what I wanted to share with you tonight. I came across a teaching. I have never learned it before. This stuff that I spoke till now, the first half hour, this is old school. This is something that we learn, and everybody who knows a little bit about Maimonides painting knows all about it. I came across a teaching from a great rabbi. His name was Reb Moshe Elshich. You ever heard about Reb Moshe Elshich? You heard about the Elshich? Yeah.
We have a descendant of us, Sephardic.
Oh, there was a lot.
family.
The Elshich family are descendants of Reb Moshe Elshich. Now, Reb Moshe Elshich, just to give you a little bit of a history, he lived in the late 1500s, he died early 1600s. And he lived in Tzfas. Yeah, he was a student of Rabbi Yosef Karo. He was the Rebbe of Reb Chaim Vital, the Hari, the entire group over there, the Belshich. And he wrote a book. Actually, it's funny that his book is called Torat Moshe. But no one calls the book Torat Moshe, because Torat Moshe we have only one. How do we call his book? The Holy Elshich, by his name. You never heard a person calling his book. I saw it written in Torat Moshe. He was very ambitious of him to pick a name like this for his book. You know, the Torah of Moshe. Come on, Torah of Moshe is reserved. So, but the way Yidden are calling his book, it's called the Holy Elshich. And it's a lot of mysticism. And obviously he was in Tzfas, so he was in the generation of the Hari. The Hari's most incredible student, Reb Chaim Vital, was his student. His Rebbe was Rabbi Yosef Karo, you know, the Shulchan Aruch. And today, if you go to Tzfas, you see his burial place. It's one of the places we visit when we visit the big cemetery in Tzfas, the Elsh's grave. He wrote a lot of books. He has a very famous book on the ethics of our fathers. And a lot of his teachings are fascinating. As a book on Haggadah Shel Pesach, also beautiful interpretation, explanation. And while I was researching the menorah a little bit, I came across this Elshich and I said, if I don't teach this tonight, I shouldn't have even created a class in the first place. So I want to share with you the Elshich's explanation on the menorah. So bear with me, and you're going to say thank you that you showed up today. The Elshich explains that the menorah was a symbol. Like everything else in the tabernacle, it's great symbolism. But when he focuses on the menorah, he gets into this description of what the menorah symbolizes. Because again, like I told you at the beginning of the class, the most famous symbol of Jewish people was a menorah, even more than the Star of David. Star of David is very modern. Star of David, even though it's older than the menorah, by the way, and it's not the Star of David. This name Star of David combination is for a different class, for a different conversation. The menorah was always that symbol of the Jewish people.
That's all the alphabets of the.
Were in the menorah.
I mean, no.
So-
no.
And the Star of David, yeah. So there's a lot, Star of David is a lot of mystery. But the menorah is the ultimate symbol of the Jewish people. Every synagogue, every temple, every place, always the menorah was always that symbol. So he says something very powerful, and I'm going to just give you a little bit of I'm not going to read it for you inside. I'm just going to give you, an explanation, the way he explains this entire narrative of the verses and the descriptions of the menorah, how it describes the ultimate human being. He says the menorah is the human being. The human being is a menorah. Why is a human being a menorah? Because a human being is a recipient and a vessel for light that comes through his good deeds and through his Torah study. Menorah holds light, and a human being is created in order to be a bearer of light, a carrier of light. And he says it's very particular why the menorah was 18 handbreadth tall, 18 tfachim. He says that's the measurement of an average human being. If you take an average height of a human being, it's 18 tfachim. And even though a human being is made out of the lowest materials that the universe has to offer, that's what he says. Even though a human being is made out of the lowest materials, come from dust, you return to dust, you're made out of the lowest materials, comes the Torah and says, Ve'asita menorah zahav tahor. You have to view yourself as precious and as important as pure gold. And he says, not just gold, pure gold. What does it mean, pure gold? Clean from any shame, any sin, so you could be so clean, so you could shine as yourself as a menorah. And he says, that doesn't happen automatically. Miksha ta'aseh menorah. How do we make a menorah? What do we say? You have to take a chisel and bang it around. One piece of gold, but you have to bang it around till it becomes, he says, if the person is not going to do his ego work, if a person is not going to every day check in with himself, with his ego, and bang on himself and ask himself, what's going on with me? You're not going to carve and work through yourself. You're not going to come out to those beautiful branches and flowers. You're not going to get anywhere. So the beginning, how do you get to that point of being that menorah, is by allowing yourself to rebuke yourself and to invite on yourself an infliction of improvement, demanding from yourself to do better, cleaning yourself from shame, cleaning yourself from sin. Now he says, very important, the menorah cannot be made out of portions. The menorah had to be one piece of gold, not a bunch of pieces that are welded together. It had to be one piece of gold, that from this you get the entire menorah. So what does he explain that? He says a person is not allowed to allow himself to fragment himself. A person has to always view his entire existence as one organism. Everything is important. Every part of you is important. You can't say, okay, I know my feet are not doing the right thing, but as long as in my head I'm doing the right thing. You know, some people say that. I'm Jewish in my heart. Yeah, I'm perfect, but other parts are not really perfect. He says, no. If you want to be a shining menorah, if you want to be a source of light to the world, if you want to be a carrier of light, there's no pieces. There is one piece from head to toe. All of you, the entire organism of the Jew, of the person, of the universe, is all has to be part of this menorah. Don't go piece by piece, okay? I can't be Jewish in my mouth. My mouth is still speaking foul language. My eyes will be Jewish. No. Every piece is important. One second. It's getting better. It's getting better. Now then he says as follows. There are three things that this is where the entire being of a human being suffers from complexities. There are three aspects where human beings need to refine themselves and work on themselves. He says sexuality, speech, and eating and drinking. And he sees this in the words. What does he say? He says, you look at the words, what does it say? You should make a menorah of pure gold. Miksha. Yeah, it has to be banged around. Te'aseh menorah. Then he says, what are the three things? Yericha, The kana. So yerecha, the word yerecha in Hebrew means a thigh. Yerech. Children are called. You see about Yaakov, it says the names of Yaakov's children, Yotzei Yerech Yaakov, those who came out of his loins, those who came out of his hips. So Yerecha refers to intimacy, sexuality. Kana is the kaneh word, speech. Words come out of your body, there's the pipe of the words. Kaf torea is those apples. Yeah. This is referring to food. Kaftorea also refers to clothing because kaftorim are buttons. Yeah, clothing have buttons in them. Ferachea and the flowers. All of that mimena iyu. Yeah, all of that has to be in one completion. Each one of those three things has to be refined, has to be taken care of. Same thing he says, giviyah. What is giviyah? Giviyah is drinking, eating, clothing. Yeah, kaftor. Again, geviyah is drinking, kaftorea is clothing, perachea is any expression. He says the word lafriach, any expression of the person. All of that has to be in synchronization. Everything has to be pure gold. Gets better. Then he says, there are three branches on each side. Every human being has three branches on each side. This is going to get now so good. He says, what are the three branches on each side? He says, on each side of you, you have ears, eyes, and hands. Yeah? You have an eye on the right, an eye on the left. You have an ear on the right, and an ear on the left. You have a hand on the right, and a hand on the left. He says, these are the three branches of the menorah. And each one of those three branches, if you look at the painting of the Rambam, each one of them has three goblets. So he says that each one of those sides, each eye, both of the eyes, both of the ears, both of the hands, have to be recipient of the three goblets. What are the three goblets? Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. The three parts of the Torah. Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Now, each one of the branches has Kaftor Vaferach, has that apple, that button, and the flower. So he says Kaftor is the oral tradition. Ferach, flower, refers to the mysticism of the Torah. Not enough to just learn the oral Torah, the Talmud. You have to also open yourself up to the mysticism of the Torah. And he says that this is each branch symbolizes. Now, wait a second. Now, then he says, you look at the middle branch. The middle branch is also three goblets. Yeah. And the middle branch has a fourth goblet. So he says the middle branch refers to the head. That's the middle of the person. And that is the three goblets is obviously referring to the same three goblets that we spoke before. The head has an additional goblet that is knowledge. Knowledge, understanding. Chochmah, Bina, he calls it Bina, the understanding. Then he says, look at the menorah and you're going to see something fascinating. From each one of the branches, where do they meet? They meet in a kaftor. They meet in a button in the middle. There is a round. Yeah, you look at the painting of the Maimonides, what do you see? You see where they meet, the two branches meet over there in a middle, where there is like a round thing. Says the Reb Elshich, the Moshe Elshich says as follows. He says, from the two eyes, where do they meet? The two eyes. He says the two ears meet at the tongue. The two eyes meet at the heart. And the two hands meet at the organs of reproduction, the organs of intimacy. He says as follows. When the two eyes, when the two ears are open to listen to words of Torah, words of positivity, what will come out of your mouth? And if those two ears are open to listen to what we shouldn't be listening to, then what's going to come out of your mouth is going to be the opposite of good stuff. Then he says, and the two eyes see good things, then what happens in the person's heart are good things. When the person lets his eyes see what he shouldn't be looking at, so then his heart is filled. They have an immediate connection. It says, you look at the menorah, you see the branches. The two ears go straight into the tongue. The two eyes go straight into the heart. And then he says, when the two hands are not occupied with good deeds, then the expression is not utilized. The person doesn't use his hands to express positivity and holiness and godliness, even expresses talents. And suddenly the hands get occupied with things that has to do with deviations in intimacy. And it's a very known thing. People who are very artistic don't express their artistic abilities with their hands. It's music, or it's arts, or even being busy with your hands to do mitzvahs. The hands find themselves in different places where they're not supposed to be. So he says, he says, if the ears are busy listening to the words of Torah, the tongue will speak that. And you're not going to say things you shouldn't say. If the eyes don't see what they're not supposed to, so the heart is not going to have desires to things they're not supposed to. And if the hands are going to be occupied with doing good, so then the organs of reproduction are not going to do bad things as well. And he brings a Gemara. The Gemara says of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Why was he called Rabbeinu HaKadosh? Where did he get a title? The Holy Rebbe. So the Gemara says, where did he get a title, the Holy? Because he never allowed his hands to go below his belly button. Yeah? And he says stealing, adultery, all of that comes from the hand. So he says, and this is the point of the menorah, reminding us the purity, purifying our ears, purifying our eyes, purifying our hands. So all the essential organs, the mouth, the heart, and the organs of reproduction, all of them are in sync and are aligned with the way Hashem wants us to be a complete, pure menorah of gold with radiant light to the world around. Now, what are the 7 candles? So he says the 7 candles is those 7 places of expression within the human being. So he says the 2 ears is one. The 2 eyes is another one. The action of our hands is a third one. Organs of reproduction is a 4th one. The heart is a 5th one. The tongue is the 6th one. And the mind is the 7th. That each one of those sources of expression, through our power of listening, we influence the world. Being a good listener. Listening to people, listening to yourself, listening to the sounds of nature. Looking with our eyes. You give a look at someone. We learned last week, those of you who were here on Shabbos, we talked about this, that Moshe was able to change people through his look. He was looking at them and he changed their lives. Yitro tells Moshe, you just have to look at them. You'll see. Just look at a Jew and you could turn him to become a minister of 1,000, a minister of 100. Start looking at them. Looking at the books I hold. Look at the Jews. See, you look at them, you elevate them. The eyes show us another form of expression. Obviously, we take in with our eyes, but our eyes has the power of influence. Our hands, obviously, and organs of reproduction. The heart, what we express with our feelings. The tongue that we use to speak. And the mind, processing ideas, discussing ideas, and so on and so on. So these are the 7 candles that is being illuminated, the menorah that's being lit. That is the menorah that every day the person has the opportunity to shine to the world through this menorah. So he takes the entire menorah from its size, 18 end breadth. This is the size of a human being. And then he talks about, each one of the symbolism beneath, each one of the menorah, each one of the branches, what it means. He basically describes the entire menorah was a reflection of the perfection where a human being can reach. That when you looked at the menorah, you saw the reflection of yourself, the human being, in your greatest potentiality. A person who works on himself, a person who purifies himself, a person that becomes one edifice of gold, one piece, not fragmented, not a person who is piecing together things. One piece of a human being who becomes a source of light to illuminate not just the temple inside, but to illuminate the whole world with your light. What a powerful, incredible, magnificent, yummy teaching. I have never, ever learned that before.
It's interesting. When you describe it, I find that it's a bigger atomic one. So surprise somewhere in that.
So obviously, there is that mystical explanation of the structure of Sfirot. You could see that in the menorah as well. I'm not even going there. I want to stay, sometimes you have to stay on a very simplistic, because the power of simplicity is so powerful sometimes. You get lost in conceptions and ideas. Just simply looking at the menorah and understanding this in beautiful, again, talking about what we can become. Now, we live in a world where not too many people tell you that you can become. You can become. Now, obviously telling it to our children, you can become. But each and every one of us, whatever age you are in, how does the creator of you look at you, what you can become? What is your potentiality? What is your ability? What lays within the human being's capabilities? Besides being what Freud said, a person of instincts and cravings and all this, description of darkness that you read sometimes in certain books of anatomy or psychology. This radiant essence of pure gold, an illuminary, a source of light to the world. Now, here I want to come to the punchline of today's class. Okay, this was all getting to the dessert. What is the punchline? We say that Moshe was very confused. How do you make a menorah? Remember we said in the beginning of the class, the Torah uses the term te'aseh menorah. Moshe did not know. How do you make a menorah? What does God say to Moshe? Throw it into fire and it will become. You told me to make it. You give me all the description of how to make it, and then you're telling me throw it into fire. And here it comes to that point in the class where I want you to really open up your heart to what we're going to say. Really? The question when we read about the descriptions of me, a person becoming pure gold from head to toe, source of light, each part of me will be in synchronization with me. Each one of my parts will be shining forth to myself, to the world around me. The normal human being learns this piece of Elshich. What do you say to yourself? Me? I have Netflix. Me? 21st century? Come on. He's talking about Jews and Sfas who sit by the table of the Hari, students of Rabbi Yosef Karo, students of Kabbalah. They can become a menorah. Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem was telling him that he's going to make a menorah with all that complexity, Moshe turned to God and says, that is impossible. I can understand building an Ark of Covenant. I can understand building a tabernacle. I can understand every one of those, whatever it symbolizes. This is accessible. Ark of Covenant is for studying. I can understand studying. People can study. Showbread table, I can understand whatever that symbolizes. But this idea that you could become pure from head to toe, one piece of gold, this human being who's made out of the lowest materials, coming from dust, returning to dust, that human being could transform himself to becoming a light to the whole world and shining forth and being one pure piece of gold from head to toe. Moshe didn't understand how is it possible. How can a person with so many complexities, with so many details, turn into one piece of gold, source of light? You know what Hashem says to Moshe? You really don't have to do much. You have to throw yourself in. As you are deformed, unformed, just throw yourself in. Wake up in the morning and put on those tefillin. You don't feel it, you don't see it, you don't hear it. You feel like you are a piece that is, you don't know where the branches are starting, where the head is going to be. Throw yourself in. That's the secret. Don't stand on the brink of the ocean and say, how are we going to pass this? Jump in. Once you jump in, everything falls into place. That's the truth. And this is the ultimate truth of life. By the way, people who made it big in life, you always hear from them the story. It came that moment we just had to throw ourselves in and we figured out that we know how to swim and we became amazing. Incredible. It doesn't go step by step. It doesn't go in a way of, let's figure it out. Let's have another meeting. We're going to have a meeting in the federation, and then we're going to have another meeting, and we're going to call in the philanthropy. We're going to make a study, and we're going to figure out how to make it done. No. It doesn't work that way. When a person wants to transform himself into a pure menorah who is shining forth in every part of you, every energy point in your body should vibrate with light. It takes a leap. You got to make that leap of faith. You got to throw it into the fire. And you're going to watch. Hashem says to Moshe, you're just going to watch it. You don't understand how it's going to happen. You're never going to be able to explain to anyone how it made that happen. But that is the ultimate truth. Greatness, majesty, incredible achievement doesn't happen by you being busy banging a little here, a little there, figuring it out. It's never going to happen. Got to throw yourself in. And this is what Hashem says to Moshe. Te ase menorah. You just take yourself. Collect that. Bring the pieces together. Throw it in. Throw it in. And it will become what it needs to become. And it will become a source of light for the whole world around. It's all that we need to know. People came and they wanted to know, how do I do this? There's no recipe. There's no recipe. No one ever wrote a recipe for success. And there's books, by the way, going to Barnes and Nobles, if it still exists somewhere on the planet. There's aisles of books on how to become rich and how to become Bill Gates and how to become Donald Trump and how to become a multi-million dollars and how to make $1 million in one day. And I know people who read all those books and they're still broke. Same thing on relationships. There are people who are reading every book on relationships and every self-help book, and they do every exercise in that book, and they are addicted to psychology and to therapy and to self-help, and they know every inspirational speaker, and they go to every inspirational speaker, and they could tell you, they forward you on YouTube, and every time they know all of that, and they're still sitting in the basement doing absolutely nothing with their lives. Why? What happened? They never took that moment of throwing themselves in. And this is what the Rebbe taught us. You know, the Rebbe who was the ultimate menorah lighter in our generation. Who else lit through his emissaries and through himself so many menorahs? The Rebbe's mission was menorah light. Every city should have menorahs and everything. Menorahs. Chabad is crazy on the menorahs. We go to court on the menorah, Supreme Court menorah, everything about the menorah. Why? The Rebbe taught us this teaching. Who are you? 21-year-old, just married. And figure out the demographics in Issaquah, how many Jews live there, demographics in Snekomi. You're going to have a meeting at Chabad headquarters to see, should we send the emissary? Shouldn't we send the emissary? Is this going to be beneficial? Are we going to make enough for what we need? We're not going to make it ordinary. The Rebbe gave you a one-way ticket and says, you go. Jump in. And you're going to see how all those pieces, the branches are suddenly coming out, the flowers are showing up, the hands, the feet, the structure. You just have to watch the unfolding of that. The unfolding of that will only begin in one thing, says Hashem to Moshe. Throw it into the fire. Jump in. This is a message to each and every one of us. We got to jump in. We have to stop being analyzers and assessors and sitting and making this calculation. Got to jump in. Got to dive into this. And when you dive in, the ocean splits. Mount Sinai is waiting. The menorah unfolds, and you have a beautiful menorah out of pure gold. So l'chaim, there was a beautiful first class in person. Thank you for everybody who came on YouTube and on Facebook and on all those beautiful platforms. Good to see everyone. Next week again, 7:30, we're going to be studying right here, not at 8, 7:30 till 8:30. And we have l'chaim, we have cake, we have lots of yummy stuff. And now let's all hope becoming this beautiful menorah. Thank you, Reb Moshe Elshich, for a beautiful, beautiful, powerful teaching that some of us are still trying to wrap our head around everything we learned today. But you're going to lay there in bed at night, and you're going to think about the menorah, and you're going to think about yourself. Yeah? Pay attention to your own physical form, and you'll see how the menorah is really you. And turn over that goblet upside down. Make sure you don't keep it for yourself. Pour it to others. Forward it to others. Teach it to others. Make sure those windows are facing the right direction. You could shine up to the world around you. Hashem will help. We do our part. Very soon, we're going to see the rebuilding of the temple. And we're going to see the high priest standing there and lighting the menorah. And we're going to know that this is somehow connected to us. Chaim.
Thank you so much.
Yes, your call, Rabbi.
Good to see you, David.
Pleasure.
See you,
Good talking to
Ahuva.
everybody.
Yeah, I got
Want
the
to ask
phone
something?
line.
Wanted to ask something?
Oh, crazy.